Welcome to the stage, first White Ribbon ambassador to speak today. His name is Forte. Forte is a South Australian folk rock singer, songwriter, guitarist, it's quite a mouthful to get out, who creates positive, meaningful music for social change. He's also a high school teacher and a White Ribbon ambassador, which explains why he's speaking to us today. He's deeply interested in gender equality and healthy masculinity. He's about to head off to Europe on a folk music pilgrimage where he wants to be challenged, inspired and pushed out of his comfort zone. So I'd like to welcome another debutant today. I think it's his first White Ribbon talk. So a big round of applause for Forte as he comes to the stage.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks everyone for having me along. Thank you very much to the South Adelaide Football Club for having me and for having a White Ribbon round. It's not a mandatory requirement of the SANFL, and so I just really want to congratulate you, and I'll go into more detail about why you should be congratulated for all the efforts that you're putting in. It's very inspiring and most welcome. I also want to acknowledge the Kaurna people and their elders past and present. It's nice to meet with you all on their land. And this opportunity to speak with you today is very meaningful to myself. As Matt said, I'm a musician. I'm about to go overseas and do a folk music pilgrimage of Europe. So I'm getting way out of my comfort zone and growing and learning and developing as a man, as a musician. I want to be inspired and changed by that opportunity. And it doesn't start when I touch down in Manchester. It's starting right now. So it's really nice to be challenged and be out of my comfort zone. I'm really glad that I get to represent White Ribbon. It reminds me of my deep sense of purpose in this world, and I'll take that through as I'm traveling around Europe and growing as a musician with a message. So my story is that I grew up in a house where my mum was a feminist and my dad is a respectful man, and so I grew up in a household where there was gender equality and respect. And so I kind of thought that was the norm. I thought that was how everyone's life was. And then I got out into the big wide world and I realised, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. That not everybody believed in gender equality and not everyone practiced respectful relationships. And it hurt me, like it properly hurt me. And this was how I got in touch with my deep sense of purpose and wanted to do something about it. Pivotally, I was travelling in New Zealand and I met a woman who had been the victim of sexual assault when she arrived in New Zealand. She'd been drugged and raped by more than one man. And it upset me. And I had a lot of compassion for her and other victims of this type of abuse. And I was trying to think, what can I do? I need to do something about this. What can I do to help? I thought I could try and help the women directly. That's one way that I could help. But as a gigantic man myself, maybe I wouldn't be welcome for people who've been through that experience. So I thought, well, what about the men? What can I do in relation to the men that have committed this crime? And I was thinking, how can I have compassion? Okay, well, I felt like something's gone wrong for these men that's led them to a place in their lives where they were willing to do this sort of thing. Something's gone wrong. They've been let down by society. So what can I do to improve the situation for those men? I'm a high school teacher as well, so I get to have influence on young people, and I'm a musician. And like the people involved in this club, especially the players, having a forum, having a public persona means that I want to do the White Ribbon oath of standing up, speaking out and acting to prevent men's violence against women, using my forum, my public forum, and the opportunity to have a microphone and a captive audience. It's a real privilege to have that and a responsibility to use it to make people's lives better. The thing that's led me here today is mentorship and role modelling and having a supportive brotherhood. So once I decided this was my deep sense of purpose, I started looking for how to help. And I realised there was a men's movement. It's called the mythopoetic men's movement. And it's a Jungian style of men coming together to grow into their best selves, supporting each other and being real and vulnerable and open and overcoming their shadows. And this is a whole thing, there's structures in place. And when I started looking into that, I realised that White Ribbon was very much in alignment with that. Because White Ribbon realises that the cause of domestic violence is often that a man will use power and control in his intimate relationship. And the reason behind that is due to inauthenticity. So if a man is feeling on the inside a certain way and then feeling a pressure not to show that, not to let that be known, then he puts on a mask. And I've done this. So I've lived my life less authentically than I try to live it now. And so I was putting on a front, a mask. It was very depressing, and it was it took a lot of energy to maintain. And if someone was trying to get at the real me and I wanted to hide that, that's when I would start trying to avoid that happening. And sometimes that can lead to abuse. It led to abuse of myself. I would, like young men can use risk-taking behaviours and try and escape the pain of inauthenticity by abusing substances. And it even leads to suicide. As we know, there's an epidemic of suicide amongst young men and all men in Australia and around the world. And that inauthenticity and that gap between the real self and the projected self also can lead to abuse of others. When the man is trying really hard to hold on to a mask and keep that facade and will do everything in his power. And if he has had poor role modelling of how to communicate, how to ask for what he wants, then he might use abusive techniques to try and maintain that facade. And understanding that, I think, is very important in learning how to overcome some of the problems that we're facing. I think there's a fear of rejection that keeps the motivation to keep the mask up. If I fear that I'm going to be rejected for who I really am, then I might want to put an inauthentic front on, just so that I can feel accepted. But what I've come to realise for myself, and what I would like other people to know, is that I'd much rather be rejected for who I actually am than accepted for some sort of pretend person that I'm projecting out there. And that most of the time, I'm not going to actually be rejected, because vulnerability is the new black. Vulnerability is the thing that endears us to each other and connects us as humans. One of the problems I faced was that gender roles, I didn't really conform to the gender roles very well. And so that led me to trying to hide my gentle nature. And so I want to encourage everybody to support all people in being their true self. And where there's pressure to fulfill a certain gender role, then that can lead to that inauthenticity, that can lead to abuse. And role modelling that behaviour, of that authentic behaviour, very, very vital to show, especially the young people growing up, what it means to be authentic, what it means to be real and true. We can break the cycle of abuse, because, as you may or may not be aware, it's abused people who turn out to be abusers most of the time. And so if we can break that cycle, we can do that with our young people. And it's been amazing to look at the young people out there playing, knowing that they are being influenced, almost every moment by the people around them, by the role models that they see. And I just acknowledge this club for checking themselves in terms of what they're role modelling and putting respect right up there on top of what they want to communicate and what culture they want to create. And we need to help those young people understand that they need to treat people not as objects, but as people. Because objectification of women, and when women are seen as secondary to men, that is what can lead to some horrific problems in terms of domestic violence and abuse. And so modelling that behaviour from the start and calling people on behaviour that doesn't live up to that rigorous levels of respect is going to go a long way to helping people either acknowledge that they're being disrespectful and then changing it. So I really want to acknowledge the board members of this club for setting the expectations and the priorities of the club and supporting a positive culture with their leadership. It's been really nice to see the gender diversity here at the club and hear from men and women. I want to thank the sponsors who are aligned with the values of South Adelaide Football Club. and they're supporting something that they believe in. And it's more than just the game, it's the community. Because as you're probably aware, it's not just the players and the supporters, but this is a hub, this is a beacon for our greater community. People will look to the players, the members, and the people involved with this club for leadership and guidance in how to be in their community. And so thank you so much to South Adelaide for stepping up and taking that responsibility on. And the members and fans of South Adelaide Football Club, you're doing your part by you're being courageously intolerant of disrespectful behaviour. If you hear someone being sexist in the crowd, you might tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, that's not how we are here. And not only will that get the person to think about their own attitudes and their own behaviours and the effect and the impact, I think even better than that, the other people around you that saw you have that courageous stepping up and calling somebody out, they're going to actually be inspired and encouraged to do the same in their life, whether it's here at the club or off in their own lives. And by just little bits at a time, we're generating that social change. You know, there's a lot going on in the media about gendered violence and about the problems that are coming out, and I think it's great. It's sad, but it's great to see that it's being talked about, that it's being owned by people, and that people care enough to want to make change. So you can be proud that you're part of a club that stands up, speaks out, and acts to prevent men's violence against women, where the elders model healthy masculinity to the younger men and contribute to developing a culture of respect. We can all help by supporting the men around us to be real and be vulnerable. We can positively reinforce the respectful behaviour, positively reinforce people who are being real and true to themselves. You can also act by becoming a White Ribbon ambassador or White Ribbon advocate. You can take the oath, you can do that online, and you can use your, whatever platform and forum you have, you can use that to stand up, speak out and act to prevent men's violence against women. I guess I'm saying the oath so many times because I've got to go say it down there in front of everybody, so I wanted to practice a few times. Hopefully I'm getting it right. I should by now. So thank you again for having me. Thank you for all that you're doing and all that you will do. And I look forward to a world where men are no longer the biggest threat to women, where there is trust and empathy, freedom and respect. Thank you.